You've probably done it. You type a wild idea into an AI image generator, and boom, out pops this incredible, mind-bending image. It honestly feels like magic. But what is actually going on under the hood? Is that AI a true artist creating something brand new? Or is it just the world's most sophisticated copy and paste tool?
Right, let's really get into this because this isn't just a fun thought experiment. This question is at the center of a massive debate. I mean, on one hand, these models can produce things that feel completely original, things you've never seen before. But on the other hand, they sometimes spit out exact pixel-for-pixel copies of images from their training data. And that, as you can imagine, is a huge, huge problem for things like copyright, data privacy, and frankly, our whole idea of what it means to be creative. So it all really boils down to these two competing behaviors. Over here on the left, you've got generalization. This is what we hope for, right? It's the AI acting like an artist, learning the idea of a cat, not just one specific cat, so it can create a totally new one. We call this creativity. And on the right, you have its evil twin, memorization. This is the AI acting like a photocopier, just reproducing something it's already seen. A team of researchers from UC Berkeley and Google DeepMind decided they wanted to get to the bottom of this. They wanted to know what makes an AI choose one path over the other.
And this gets us right to the core of the problem they were trying to crack.
You see, trying to study this in a real-world model like Midjourney is, well, it's next to impossible. These things are enormous, with billions of connections. Peeking inside to figure out why it just copied a specific image is like trying to find a single memory in a human brain by looking at one neuron. It's just a giant, messy, complicated black box.
So, to get around that complexity, the researchers did something really, really clever. Instead of trying to dissect a real-world model, they decided to build their own tiny universe where they could study the problem like true scientists. They called this their memorization laboratory, and this is such a cool idea. It's a totally controlled mathematical environment. So instead of poking around in the dark, they could change one variable at a time and see exactly what happened. It's about taking the guesswork out and making it a real, repeatable experiment. And the experiment itself was beautiful in its simplicity. Step 1, they made their own super simple data. Not complex photos, but just clean clusters of data points. You can think of them like constellations of stars in the sky. Step 2, they trained a bunch of different AI models on this data, some tiny, some huge. And then step 3, they just watched. They watched to see the exact moment a model would stop learning the shape of the constellations and start just memorizing the exact location of every single star. Now, to run this lab, they had a few dials they could turn. They could change K, the number of constellations, they could change D, how complex each star is, and N, how many total stars are in the training set. But the most important dial, the one this whole story is about, is M. That's the capacity of the model. You can just think of it as the model's brainpower. The big question was, how much brainpower does a model need before it decides it's easier to be lazy and just copy everything? And that question leads us directly to their core hypothesis for why an AI would ever choose to copy instead of create in the first place. The fundamental idea is that an AI model during training is, well, it's kind of lazy. It's always going to take the path of least resistance. The difficulty of a path is measured by something called training loss. A lower loss score basically means an easier, more efficient path for the model. So the whole thing becomes a simple question. At what point does it become easier for the AI to just memorize every single data point instead of doing the hard work of actually learning the underlying patterns? So you can imagine these two little voices inside the AI competing with each other. The generalizing voice wants to learn the big picture, the structure of the K original clusters. And this is the easier path when the model has a small capacity, a small m, because it just doesn't have enough brain power to remember every little detail. But the memorizing voice just wants to perfectly copy all n of the individual data points. And this becomes the easier path when the model has tons of capacity, a really big M. And this is where it gets really amazing. The researchers didn't just have a hunch about this. They actually built a complete mathematical theory to predict the exact moment that the model would snap from one behavior to the other. Their math predicted something they called a crossover point. This is a critical model size, a specific capacity, where all of a sudden, the training loss for memorizing plummets and becomes lower than the loss for generalizing. It's the exact tipping point where laziness wins out. And they could actually calculate it beforehand. Their theory gave them a formula for this crossover point, which they called M star. based on n, the number of training samples. This wasn't just a guess, it was a concrete scientific prediction they could go and test in their lab. So the stage was set. You've got the theory, you've got the prediction, and you've got the laboratory to test it in. The big question was, would the experiment actually match the math? And the result? It was an absolute resounding yes. What the experiment showed was that the switch from creating to copying wasn't gradual at all. It was a sudden, sharp phase transition. Think about it like water turning into ice. Water doesn't slowly get more and more solid. It hits 0 degrees Celsius and bam, it freezes. It's a sudden flip. The AI was either generalizing or it was memorizing. There was no in between. And you can see that transition so clearly right here. When the model's capacity, M, is low compared to the dataset size, N. Look at that. The memorization is almost 0. The model is generalizing. It's being creative. But the moment you increase the capacity past a certain point, bam! The memorization ratio just skyrockets to nearly 100%. The model has completely flipped its state. But here's the part that is just mind-blowing. The experiment showed that this phase transition, the sudden flip, happened almost exactly where their mathematical theory said it would. The tipping point occurred when the model's capacity, M, was about 4/5 or 80% of the dataset size, N. The math perfectly predicted the reality. That's just incredible. So what's the big picture here? What should we take away from all this? Well, first, AI memorization isn't just some random glitch. It's a predictable event, almost like a law of physics. Second, it's all about a simple trade-off between the model's brain power and how much data you feed it. And third, and this is the most exciting part, if we understand this relationship, we can start to predict, and maybe even control, when an AI is likely to copy its data. What this research does is pull back the curtain on one of AI's biggest mysteries. It moves us away from just being surprised by what AI does and towards actually understanding why it does it. And it leaves us with this incredible, tantalizing question. If we now understand the formula that makes an AI a copycat, can we finally use that knowledge to engineer an AI that is guaranteed to be a creator?